Good morning. This is week number 2 in our sing-along prelude. So rather than just listening to me, you're invited to sing along with the words on the screen today. We're going to be singing "We Shall Be Known" again. So I'll give you that. All right. 2, 1. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive and deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome, everyone, to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or watching from wherever you may be, know that you are welcome. I'm the Reverend Eric Meter, this congregation's lead minister.
And I'm Chris, your worship associate this morning. We acknowledge that our FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is a responsibility of our congregation and of all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves and all those who have the willingness to understand, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice.
It is wonderful to be with all of you, especially so many in this corner. We have a special guest with us today who I'll introduce in just a few minutes. First, let's begin by once again joining our voices in song. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing together, "Our World is One World," which is number 134 in our gray hymnal. The lyrics will also be on the screen above. Before we light our chalice this morning, I'd like to introduce to you someone many of you may already know. You see, our guest this morning, Liz James, is the co-founder of what, in all likelihood, is the largest single group in our religious movement, the Unitarian Universalist Hysterical Society. Liz James is a Unitarian Universalist humorist, author, preacher, and also one half of the humor podcast, The Cracked Cup. She's working on a book with our own Skinner Press and believes that Unitarian Universalism in a Unitarian Universalism, that is filled with meaning and joy and that approaches change as an adventure. She and I spoke in the spring about her being with us here before long, and I'm thrilled to welcome her now. Liz, would you come forward and in a moment light our chalice this morning? We light our chalice to these words adapted from Erica Hewitt. And yes, these were the same words that we used last week. They get to the point, and Liz liked them for today as well. The chalice, as a symbol of this faith, arose as a sign of promise that the marginalized would neither be forgotten or ignored. This morning we remember all people who have been told explicitly or implicitly through violence or government policy, through derision or dehumanization, that they're anything less than whole, anything less than beloved. As we light this flame, may we make of our lives a beacon, a symbol of our promise to draw the circle wide, a sign that we will not rest until all means all. Thank you, Liz. Our chalice is lit. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jody McIntosh. I'm the Director of Religious Exploration, and I'm here to share a story with you this morning, and it's called A Little Spot of Giving. Hi, I'm a little spot of giving. I'm here to show you how to give the most amazing gifts. We love gifts. These aren't just ordinary gifts. These gifts have the power to spread kindness. Here are some of my favorites. Giving a gift of helping. If your neighbor has a hard time doing something, offer to do it for them. There's the giving a gift of teaching. Help someone learn something new. Just one more loop and you got it. Giving a gift of friendship. Say hi to someone you have not played with before. Thank you for asking me to play. This is fun. Giving a gift of advice. Offer help and guidance to someone who needs it. I think this painting might need background. Giving a gift of listening. Pay attention when someone is talking. Giving a gift of compassion. If a friend is sick, make them a nice card to show them that you care. Giving a gift of love. Make something from the heart and give it to someone special. I made this just for you because I love you. Giving a gift of time. Spend quality time with someone you care about and focus on them. Giving a gift of empathy. When someone is sad, be a shoulder for them to cry on, an ear to listen. I lost my cat. I'm sure your cat is right around here. These signs will help. Giving a gift of hope. Offer positive words of encouragement when someone is feeling down. Giving a gift of teamwork. Working together can make you accomplish more and make tasks easier. Giving a gift of nature. Plant a new tree or garden. Giving a gift to the earth. Throw away your trash and help keep the planet clean. Giving a gift of appreciation. Say thank you to someone who helped you today. Giving a gift of volunteering. Find a charity or food drive to help others in need. Giving a gift of generosity. Be thankful for what you have and look for ways to go above and beyond to share. And giving a gift of sharing. If you have more than you need, offer to give some away to brighten someone else's day. I was able to split my ice pop. Would you like half? Giving a gift of joy. If you have outgrown your toys, give them to children who don't have any. Now that you have seen the power of giving, what gift are you going to give today? We will now sing our children on their way, and as we are accustomed, if the people on this aisle make an arch and anyone else who wants to, they can reach their hand out and an arch as we sing. Thank you.
The images are always really cute, but I love watching the children's faces the best during the story. And now we turn to how we are together. As health challenges continue, please take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch. If you are new to FirstU and you would like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. And if you're right here in Worship Hall with us this morning and would like more information, it's available at the welcome table at the back of the queues, and Kate is waving today right back there. And now we have Phil from the board to highlight some announcements today. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning. First, the board met last week and approved 2 new members. Please welcome Sharon and Brenda. For the next couple of weeks, FirstU is collecting donated items to prepare for our online auction this spring. You can downsize and donate your high-end items, jewelry, and appraised art, then receive a tax receipt for the donation when it sells. Please email auction@FirstUnitarianOttawa for more information. The Women's Spirituality Group is starting up again with a new name, Women's Pagan Circle. They plan to meet every 6 weeks, starting with a celebration of Imbolc or Candlemas, the halfway point between winter solstice and spring equinox. You can join them here January 31st at 7 p.m. That's a Wednesday evening. And finally, mark your calendar for an adult learning workshop on the history of protest music on Sunday, February 11th, 1 p.m. You can learn more about all of these events and other activities in the EUU. We encourage you to sign up to receive the EUU, our weekly email newsletter. Check our Facebook and Instagram pages and our website for notices and updates. Our calendar continues to be as full as ever. though some of our activities take place online. This morning, each of us is welcome. Of any heritage or faith, whatever our burdens, any culture or race, any gender or orientation, in any body, all that we are. Today, we are all a part of this spiritual community.
Thank you, Phil. Each week, we pause in our time together in recognition of both the joy and sorrows in our lives and across the globe. We honor our celebrations and challenging by placing stones in water. As the ripples extend outward, we can imagine them continuing out beyond the bowls in front of us, out through and past our pews, out into the larger community of all. Chris, I know you're doing something important. Would you drop a stone or two for me? A stone of thank you to Ottawa Mayor Mark Sutcliffe and his staff. Because of their efforts, Google Maps finally updated the map to the new entrance for Cleary Avenue. It's only been there a year or more. While the concerted efforts of our staff and lay leaders did not get Google's attention, a little leverage from official channels did. Our gratitude to the mayor and his staff for this attention to detail. And to Dick B., another stone please, who reached out to the mayor in preparation of his son's memorial here this last Tuesday. Another stone of gratitude goes out to, we call them TI, but I'm going to try to pronounce this. This is the Inuktitut words. Transgonuvidat Inuit, for the donation of a new stove in our kitchen downstairs. TI is renting space from us for their sewing program and for their monthly elder lunches. Another stone of appreciation and thanks to Dr. Ian, who lives at Unitarian House and is a representative to our Campus Wellness Committee, who has just been awarded the Order of Canada for his work across Canada on mental health. And a stone of joy that our music director's son, Kip, turned 1 year old yesterday. And a stone that is accompanied by some very sad news. Enjoying time in Hawaii, our former music director, Jane Perry, died this last Wednesday. She quietly slipped away shortly before sunset on Wednesday. The news reached us on Friday afternoon. Jane was a longtime music director here and is deeply, deeply loved within this community and well beyond. She had been diagnosed with colon cancer 2 years ago, and news of any and all celebrations of her life will be shared with you as we learn them. Please now come forward to honor your own joys and sorrows by placing stones in these bowls of water. That last stone that I placed is in honor of all the joys and sorrows that remain in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. Carrying cards at our caring table at the back of the room for the mayor's office, Dick, T.I., Dr. Ian, and Jane's family are at the back of the hall for us to sign. Even if you didn't know them, signing your name to a caring card is a way for us to extend our care on behalf of those who have given so much to this community of faith. I invite you now, each of you, into a time of stillness and reflection. After a few moments, Jen will bring us back together with the gift of music.
Good morning. In lieu of a reading this morning, I'm going to tell you a story. But before I do, a little bit about myself and why I am so excited to be here talking with you this morning. As Eric mentioned, I'm a UU humorist. I've spent the last 6 months preaching in the US and Canada and traveling. The sermon I usually give is the story of the UU Hysterical Society. It's a humor-filled sermon with a lovely message about an expansive UU identity. I've had a lot of practice giving that sermon, and I've gotten pretty good at it. I would say it's my best sermon. It's not the sermon I am offering you this morning. Sorry. You're getting a story I tell way less often, and that I have never actually told as an introduction to a new congregation, which, to be honest, feels a bit risky. But when I heard about your work around affordable housing, I asked Reverend Eric if I could come speak with you. I didn't give him the whole not my best sermon spiel when I was selling him the idea, so he said yes. So I'm going to start with a story. The first thing I ever shoplifted was broccoli. I was 15, I was just coming off a stretch of being homeless, and I had recently entered foster care. My foster mother was having struggles of her own at the time, and there wasn't food in the house for me or for my foster sisters. I had reasoned through the morality of shoplifting in this situation. A fair society feeds its children. I had a right to take matters into my own hands, that sort of thing. I was headed for Unitarianism even then. I had shored up my courage by humming tunes from Les Miserables on the way to the store. To be on the safe side, though, I decided to steal the most morally upstanding thing I could think of: which was broccoli. I don't recommend broccoli as a first caper. It has the advantage of being found in the vegetable section, which is not carefully monitored for shoplifters, but it's large and it's sort of grippy when you try and slide it under your coat. Somehow I managed, though, and I ran home through the alleys, high on adrenaline and self-righteousness, only a kid and feeding my sisters. And I slammed through the front door, and I triumphantly unloaded my bounty onto the kitchen table with a thud, and my youngest foster sister stared at it, and then she stared at me, and then she said, "I'm not eating that, it's gross." The worst thing about choosing broccoli as an introductory shoplifting item is you are morally obliged to make sure it doesn't go to waste. And even if you are very hungry, a whole head of raw broccoli is a lot of broccoli. Next time, I stole icing. That went over way better. Then I stole some clothes I needed. Then I stole some clothes I just kind of wanted. And then I stole a Vanilla Ice CD, which I have trouble justifying on several levels. Pretty soon, I was just stealing a lot. I had gone from doing what was necessary to just being a thief. Until the day I stopped. I remember that day just as vividly. I was standing in that same store, chocolate icing in my hand. I was in a different foster home at this point. I was in a new one I'd been in for a few months. It was headed by a single dad named Ed. Ed went to work and came home and cooked supper and read novels on the couch and then went to bed. There was always food. There was never any drama. I believe at the time I thought it was a little bit boring, but looking back, I know Ed saved my life. So I stood in the grocery aisle, staring down at the chocolate icing in my hand, thinking about what Ed's face would look like if I got caught. He expected more of me. He didn't know I was a thief. So I put the icing back, and I walked out, and I never stole again. So after that moment when I put the icing back, my story looks like a pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of narrative. I stopped stealing, I stopped a host of other behavior problems. I got my grades up, and I got first through high school and then through university. I ended up married to a doctor, living a respectable stay-at-home mom church lady life. I mean, Unitarian church lady, but still. When I tell this story in a Unitarian Universalist context, people are always so kind. They are quick to reassure me I have nothing to be ashamed about. They tell me I had no choice but to steal. I did have choices, though. I could have earned enough food by babysitting. Saskatchewan also has food banks and soup kitchens. As a minor, I could have gone to the Children's Advocate about my foster mother. Stealing was not my only option. I had limited choices, sure, but within those limits, I could have done better. So the narrative I carried for years was that I chose to steal out of moral weakness, and that I stopped because I chose to become a better person. I thought of crime and to some extent poverty as arising from individual decisions. I thought people chose to commit crimes because I remember deciding to commit crimes. But in university, as I got a chance to study this stuff, my understanding started to become rounded out. Research shows that groups act in fairly predictable ways in response to their context. Yes, people in poverty don't make perfect choices, but neither do people with riches. Imperfect choices, more of a human thing than an income thing. But if your income is higher, there's wiggle room to absorb the consequences of an imperfect choice, or bad luck, or injustice. So on a social level, then, if we want to change crime rates, we don't lecture people about being moral, we change their contexts. Of course, I don't need to explain this to you. Unitarian Universalists already usually think of poverty and crime as more of social issues than individual weakness. Our belief in the worth and dignity of every person, as well as our understanding of interdependence, means we think of these stories like mine not as a bad thing I was doing, but a bad situation I was in. You have probably already noticed what took me years to figure out, the role that my situation played in my choices. Put simply, I stole because I was deeply hungry, physically and emotionally. When I was no longer hungry, I stopped. I owe my life today to the choice Ed made to open his home. I got lucky. Others didn't. Like many UUs, I would love to be in a society where luck is not a necessity. A society where we have more large-scale solutions, more systemic options for people. Options like the housing that this congregation is working towards. Due to the help I received, my life went in a different direction from the one it was headed in. And so now, as an adult, I had more than enough. I had too much, actually. Let me explain. Let's fast forward to another story. I'm now in my 30s. This is in my doctor's wife, mother, church lady years. I was predictably very interested in poverty reduction. I was working on a campaign aimed at getting the government of Saskatchewan to implement a poverty reduction plan. We chose the campaign title, Poverty Costs, because we were trying to get across the point that it's not actually frugal to allow people to suffer. Things like hospital stays, police involvement, homeless shelters, there is some pretty good math that makes an argument that paying people's rent is cheaper than paying the alternatives. So we chose this somewhat sociopathic-sounding angle because it's true, and it's a good argument, but also because we were being strategic. Saskatchewan had a very conservative government. And in my experience, telling a conservative government that they are at risk of losing the Unitarian Universalist vote is... they don't see us as one of their key voting blocs. We can't just convince the usual suspects, a teammate said, summarizing the reason for our strategy. We need to reach people who are oriented towards money more than people who don't care about the poor, you know, the ones who live in penthouses. I live in a penthouse, I said. My friend knew this. He'd been to my house. We had held committee meetings of this committee in my house. All the color drained from his face. Thank you. I didn't mean you, he stammered earnestly. I meant people who live in penthouses. It's okay, I grinned. But it was only sort of okay. It's never easy to be judged by your friends, even the ones who do not actually realize it's you that they are judging. But what really matters was I agreed with him. I was judging myself. In the words of one meme I saw on the internet, how about we agree nobody gets seconds until everyone has a first helping, but for houses? I know in my bones what it's like to have no home at all. So what business did I have taking more home than I needed? So we know that a huge gap between rich and poor is bad for the poor. I believe it is also bad for the rich. I found that having more than the others around me was socially isolating and morally challenging. These are better problems than the problems of poverty, but they were still problems. So where do you look when you're feeling isolated and dealing with morally challenging issues? Well, this is the traditional territory of religion. Traditional religion has much to say about money. Some of it is similar across faiths. None of the world's major holy texts think very highly of greed. All of them feel like charity is a good idea. Beyond that, though, there are some interesting differences. Hinduism teaches that material prosperity should be part of the 4 main goals of a life. It actively encourages working towards wealth. Islam is much less concerned with how much you have, but is very concerned about how did you get it. And most of all, what are you going to do with it? Giving to the needy is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Buddhism teaches that attachment to worldly things causes suffering, but not that money itself is necessarily bad, depending on how you use it. Of course, much of our religious DNA as UUs comes from Christianity. As everybody knows, the Bible says that money is the root of all evil. As is often the case with things that everybody knows the Bible says, the Bible does not actually say that. It does say that love of money is the root of all evil, which is a subtle and tricky distinction, one that I am suspicious of. By demonizing a love of poverty or attachment to it, both Buddhism and Christianity are able to spiritualize poverty. Nuns, monks, priests, they all take vows of poverty. Yet it is somehow okay for the religious institution to amass great amounts of wealth. That's just fine. I am always suspicious of religious teachings that seem to primarily benefit the religious structures that are teaching them. How about UUism? What do we say about money? Surprisingly little, which is a bit strange. We are not usually so silent, which is too bad, because what I needed was a truly UU approach to money. I didn't need a set of instructions like a traditional faith might offer. I didn't want to be told how much money I should have or what I ought to do with it. I was looking for a set of tools I could use to make decisions in my life. You know, like we have build your own theology for figuring out what you believe. Or we have our whole lives sexuality education for learning about gender and sexuality and relationships. I wanted tools and company for the journey, which is where Unitarian Universalism usually really shines. Not so much with the money, though. Much of what we say about money is unspoken. Often our structures talk for us. Both physically and systemically, they require a lot of money to run and maintain. This means a significant pledge base, which in turn means a large portion of our congregations have to have people who are both willing and able to make significant pledges. That structure is a statement we make about money. But it's more than that. A pledge is a voluntary thing. We welcome people whether they can pledge or not. This is also a statement we make about money. The piano may be varying levels of fancy, but anyone, and we mean anybody, is welcome to play it. Whatever your life situation, you are welcome here. What we say verbally, a little different. Our verbal statements often focus on financial justice, bemoaning wealth inequality, for example. This can sometimes take the form of pointed barbs at those who have a bit more money. I was very sensitive to that during my penthouse days. But the struggle changed how I spoke. I learned to speak and act in support of greater wealth equality, but not demonizing any specific group of people. I don't want to exclude anyone based on income, or anything really. People are people. I want them to feel welcome. Money separates us into categories, and it encourages us not to speak openly with one another. It disconnects us, and I think we should fight back. We deal with other types of diversity so well, don't we? With other challenging topics, we are not afraid of hard questions. We support one another in tackling them. Imagine if we treated income differences the way we treat sexuality or belief differences. If we weren't afraid of being different, if we saw it as a strength. If we offered people tools and community for tackling those important life choices, tools not just for discussing how the world should be, but for living in it as it is, in a way you can feel good about. In the end, I didn't resolve the penthouse dilemma. Like with the end of homelessness, the end to life in the penthouse just kind of happened. The tool part came later. When the boy's dad and I eventually separated, it was not immediately clear what would happen with the finances. The separation was amicable, so I wasn't worried about court or anything, but the future was generally uncertain. On instinct, I moved into a tiny apartment. Each boy had a bedroom, and I slept in the living room, and I spent very carefully. Like any good UU, I managed my uncertainty by going to the library. My favorite one of the books I read was called Your Money or Your Life. Yes. Which several people have found transformative. They have this great process. You write down everything you spend and you categorize it in a way that's tailored to you. And at the end of the month, you look at these categories and you think about the value you got from the amount you spent. Was it the right amount? Was it too little or too much? You also convert dollars into minutes spent at work to earn those dollars so that you can look at your monthly expenditures through the lens of minutes worked and life energy spent. Following this process over time, I learned to feel what the authors call my point of enough. a sense of where exactly your point of joy is, where the time you traded to get something was worth it. This is hard at first. Our culture doesn't teach you that there even is such thing as a point of enough, but you can learn to feel it. It's like thawing out a frozen limb. Enough does not feel like poverty. Poverty is uncertainty and fear and constantly calculating. Poverty is embarrassing and exhausting. My tiny apartment where I sat cozy in my feelings of enough felt nothing like the experiences of my youth. My spending was low, but I was secure in the knowledge that I could manage anything that came up. Poverty felt like powerlessness. Living below my means felt like power. It felt like finally exhaling a breath I had held for years. I had everything I needed and nothing I didn't. Gone were the days of endlessly tidying and organizing and maintaining expensive stuff. Gone were the days of inviting a friend over, only to have their eyes widen at the sight of the penthouse and feeling like a sudden distance, subtle distance, was appearing between us. Gone was the feeling of living a life that was not my own. When the divorce was finalized and I now had more to spend, it was time to start making choices. I realized I had fallen in love with enough. I loved my cozy apartment. I loved waking up in the dark on wintry mornings and journaling and sipping tea beside my beeswax candles. I loved traveling the country in Squeaky, my very old minivan. I loved beans and rice and board games in the evenings. This was a life that fit me. And the money left over after the point of enough, choosing how to help others with that money was the most joyful way I could have spent it. This was not a vow of poverty. I am not interested in glamorizing poverty. Poverty is a social problem with devastating consequences. It's not a tool for spiritual growth. But I do believe that after a certain point, excess money does present a problem. It wasn't good for me, but it was very good for the other people I could give it to. As an expression of my Unitarian Universalism, I took a vow of enough. I vow to approach my finances with mindfulness and think critically about my spending. I am generous about my needs. I have all of the things that are important to me, like financial security and means to travel. But the money that is mine, beyond my point of enough, I see that as belonging to my society. I am the steward of how it is spent. I am not its owner. After living this way for a couple of years, I couldn't believe how much money I had once wasted. I kept thinking about all the people I could have helped if I'd done this sooner. I shouldn't have waited for a divorce to start living a life that was more in line with my values. This was harder guilt to work with for me than the stealing was. It's easier to forgive yourself for the choices you make when you're struggling to survive, when you're too hungry to think. It's harder to forgive yourself for the choices you make when you are the one with the power. But even when you're the one with the power, your choices are still framed by your situation. Feeling stuck in a system you don't agree with is hard. Figuring out how to push back is hard. At this point, I had long since made peace with my history of stealing, but now I had to go through that whole process again to make peace with a different set of choices I had made. If I could speak to 15-year-old me stealing or 35-year-old me in the penthouse, I would tell those versions of myself the exact same things. First, I would tell them they have more choices than they realize. 15-year-old me could have gone to a food bank or a soup kitchen. 35-year-old me could have participated in the financial decisions of our household more assertively. We have more freedom than we realize. Going forward, I want to recognize that freedom and use it. And I also understand that it doesn't always happen. In all of our decisions, financial or otherwise, we choose imperfectly. I don't know what choices feel most alive to you in your life, financial or otherwise. I don't know what you're struggling with. But if you felt a welling of forgiveness towards me for doing what I had to do as a kid, I invite you to tap into that same well of forgiveness for yourself in the choices you are making, particularly this month. 'Tis the season, after all, of failed New Year's resolutions. Sharing the journey isn't just for the times when our journey is going according to plan. It's not just for the times when we are on the same path, either. I don't know what your story is around money. I don't know your situation, your background, or values. I know some of your values as a community by the decisions you've made around how your land will be used. But on an individual level, I don't know your story. Whatever it is, I hope over time that we will work our way free of a culture of silence around money. I hope that wrestling with our own personal histories and choices will come to be seen as an important part of our spiritual lives and of our lives as a community. We have done this before. There was a time when if you loved someone of the wrong gender, you did not mention that to your church. There was a time when your doubts about God were a reason to leave, not a reason to start a book club on Tuesday night. We know how to transform a culture of discomfort and silence into one of encouragement and discussion and sharing, and we can do that again. It takes bravery to do this, individually or as a community. So as someone who has been without a home, I want to say thank you to this community. I know that the conversations you've had and all of the figuring of things could not have been easy, and I know that there will still be challenges ahead. Thank you for your intentionality, for thinking so carefully about your resources and your values. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you for helping change people's contexts and giving them a chance to be part of a better story. Your choices will literally welcome people home. And thank you for the work you've done in service of financial intentionality in Unitarian Universalism, thinking carefully about how we use our resources in service of our values. Every conversation that we have about this opens a door for another conversation. Every such conversation subtly changes the shared context that we all live in as Unitarian Universalists. Every such context opens a door for each of us to be part of a better story.
Our choral anthem today is North. We would like to dedicate today's performance to Jane Perry. I didn't have the pleasure of meeting Jane, but I have heard so many stories since coming to this congregation about her immense musical talent, her compassion and kindness and grace. And it is obvious to me that her legacy continues to live on in this congregation, in the music programs that she loved and helped to build. And it's such an honor to be a part of that. So thank you.
Does he love me? So beautiful. Thank you, choir. Ushers, go ahead. This congregation has a long history of care, vitality, and bringing people together to move the arc of justice forward. We've been able to live into our hopes and dreams because of the generosity of those within and beyond this community. Go ahead and bring the baskets forward. Thank you. Whether you're here in Worship Hall or anywhere else, you are part of this community. To make a gift in support of the work of this congregation, you don't need to use the baskets that are now beginning to make their way among our pews. Wherever you are, you're invited to go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how to make a donation or to keep up with your pledge. Our gifts are freely given and gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this community of faith, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another. And now please rise as you're willing and able. We'll join together in our closing hymn before the closing hymn. 'Tis a gift to be simple, which is number 16 in our gray hymnal.
Liz, would you come up? I'll do the announcement part, and you can do the fancy words.
Okay.
Please be seated. Please seated. Before we begin to close this time of worship and reflection, a reminder that coffee hour will begin in Fellowship Hall just immediately after the service. And if you are new here, still feel new, or simply welcome good conversation today, please pick up a green mug. I used to call these blue. It's a long story. As you enter Fellowship Hall, doing so will help others looking forward to good conversation find you. And while the grow towers, the Jaski's grow towers, are up and running in the old volunteer room, it's going to be a couple weeks yet before we're able to enjoy leafy greens from them, but it will happen soon. To extinguish our chalice this morning, these words.
by Alex Capitan. You can't fool me. Money is no replacement for love. A Manhattan is no substitute for a good conversation. I'm not a houseplant. I need more than sun and water. Lift your voices in harmony, sharing tears, banishing fears. Ask me again, how are you? And then listen. We listen to each other. Dance around the fire. You don't need feet for that. You do not need to work on your workflow. I promise. All that's nonsense. You are plenty efficient enough. You are a sacred vessel of light, of ideas. You are not your portfolio, your equity. Happiness is not coming as soon as you're done with this debt, this degree, this child, this house. Happiness is when you see someone suddenly as if you've never seen them before. When the waves of pleasure crash over you and you finally stop fighting them, when you get the coffee right, when the moon blocks the sun and you realize you live on a miraculous ball floating in space, when your child takes your hand to show you something they've drawn, when you ask for help and people say, yes, of course, you're a being of light, exactly where you're supposed to be. Don't forget, okay? This morning's chalice is extinguished, but the spark of our connections and our faith remains. Jen, will you please bless us again by leading us in our closing song?
And now, as we, each of us, and all of us, return to the challenge of helping the world come even more alive in love, let us go forward with the drive for better days in our steps and love in our hearts. My friends, may we, as we leave this space and this time, go in peace. Go in peace.